Oh, hello. Welcome back. I was going to make a video this week about Martin Luther King Jr. and Black history and all that jazz. Southern California has been hit by some pretty devastating mudslides recently following their wildfires. And living in California and experiencing wildfires this year, I can say this is one hell of a scary thing. So this week I want to just go over why fires are caused, how frequent they pretty much happen, and maybe shed a bit of light on what we can maybe do about it. So California is notorious for being really dry. Pretty much every year you hear about one large wildfire in California or another. But this year it struck a little close to home for me. Back in mid-October, there were 21 different fires that pretty much made a grouping all around where I live. And my hometown was set up as the emergency response center. Just a few blocks from my house, the Red Cross set up their collection center. When you think disaster relief, this is what it looked like. There was massive amounts of volunteers everywhere, people just scrambling to help with this and that. We had to actually refuse more donations because we had too much to actually handle. These fires ended up killing 44 people and burning a lot of land. It's going to take years for our area to recover from this, and likely just as long for Southern California as well. After the fires in December, many of the hillsides became barren and prone to landslides around Ventura. Loose dirt came down hills mixed with water and created absolutely terrible disaster. Over the past few decades, California has seen an uptick in the number of wildfires. And I'd love to just sit here in my room and just talk about stuff, but I have not gotten out of the house in a few days. So, you know what? Let's go for a walk. One of the reasons why California is so susceptible to wildfires is because of the fairly dry climate as well as the hills. So heat rises, and so when there's a hill, it's going to go up the hill and not so much down the hill. And the coastal range that I live in, it has quite a few hills. This park is a pretty good example, and you'll notice that there's a lot of gray, whereas a lot of other places would have plenty of green, lush hillsides. This stuff is just heather, it's just dead plant material, and we can pretty much grab a bit of it, and this stuff lights amazingly. So we pretty much have giant places that encourage fires to spread up them, covering as much area as possible, and pretty much just a ton of tinder everywhere. And so this also leads to a buildup in foliage. Now, a lot of the woods around here actually require fire every once in a while to come through here to burn off a lot of the dead twigs and branches and to provide ash for the roots. Many local species out here, like California redwoods, actually require fire to open up the seed pods so they can actually reproduce. Not accounting for the fact that like 99% of all redwoods are actually genetically identical due to spreading through roots instead of actually seeds, but never mind. But this means that the local climate has adapted to having fire coming through. And the Native Americans around here were very aware of this, and they would even set small areas ablaze for control burns to clear out all the foliage and all the stuff so that there wouldn't be a large fire that would come through and tear everything apart. Now, one thing that they had over us was that they could just move around if there was a larger fire somewhere, whereas we have very permanent homes. And when these get ablaze, all hell breaks loose. So, when you have a fire come through an area, it burns out all the grass, which is holding on to little bits of soil on the hillside. And so the grass actually helps any mud or anything from sliding down the hill. Like here, all these rocks are greatly eroded because there isn't a blanket of grass over top to keep the soil in place. And so water can just flow right over it, gathering up bits of sediment and soon enough you have a bit of a landslide on your hands. This was what was so devastating to places like Ventura, where they are still having to search through a bunch of mud, looking for everything from broken glass to human remains, really. It's really terrible down there. And so Southern California was hit by pretty much a double whammy of natural disasters this year. All that we need to top it off is just an earthquake. Oh, it's absolutely beautiful out here, but I gotta get back home because I live over 3 miles away from here, and my only form of transportation is walking, and I still need to finish up this video. So with the wildfires that were around here, a lot of the houses were on hills, and oh god, I have the hiccups. Oh. A lot of the hills had houses on them, so when the hills caught on fire, so did the houses. And we're well aware of these hills being very prone to fire, but we keep on rebuilding on them because that's where people already have land built. Housing is not cheap, nor is land. So when people are already living in these disaster-prone areas, they want to rebuild there. This line of eucalyptus trees here, about 1.5 years ago, there was a fire that actually caught to a bunch that were right near the freeway right here and burned down these houses. And 1.5 years later, and this small, tiny little project here is just being finished now. So it's really going to take a massive toll in California over the next few years to actually be able to rebuild. If you ask me, I think that we should probably have like better regulations and restrictions on where people can build. Maybe reworking our fire prevention systems. For a while in California, there was a no fire tolerance policy. In Yosemite National Park here in California, they would let small wildfires take their course because that's what the natural flora needed. But in came Smokey the Bear, and there was this whole policy about, no, we are just going to prevent fires as much as possible, and we're not going to let any burn. So all this dead foliage kept on building up, and it just was a time bomb waiting to happen. So a while ago, I'm really not quite too sure when, but a while ago there was a massive fire that went through there and destroyed a lot of land. It destroyed some important buildings, and this should have been more of a wake-up call. I mean, they do small control burns, which is good, but we should have this kind of system elsewhere. A lot of the landscapes around here need fire, and it's not so much a destructive force of nature as it is just a normal requirement that a lot of plants around here have. Not to mention that, you know, as the planet warms, stuff around here is going to get more dry and more flammable, and that's what we've seen, an unusually large number of fires. There were over 7,000 fires that CAL FIRE responded to. That is up from the average of just under 5,000. So with a 40% increase, you kind of gotta wonder, okay, what's going on? Business Insider estimated that the costs of the October fires in California would be around $9 billion. And that's not even taking into account the wildfires that are most recent from Southern California. California and the rest of everyone else kind of needs to ramp up their consciousness about climate change. And, well, this should maybe be a bit of an incentive. Okay, so that was quite a video. Sorry it came out a bit late. I ended up not having time to do stuff. So you know what? Starting now, I'm going to be making things a whole week in advance so that I don't run into things like this in the future. So this week, expect something simple, like, I don't know, like a cooking video or something. I've really been enjoying just making stuff. I find it very rewarding. No, but this was fun. I really enjoyed this. Maybe next time I'll try and record a song for it or something. So yeah, that's it for me. I hope you enjoyed it. See ya.